For those of you who had COVID and have persistent symptoms, whether it's fatigue, trouble sleeping, pain, and any of a host of things, even heart disease, lung disease, these are all very, very treatable. That your doctor doesn't know doesn't mean there's lack of effective treatment, just lack of effective education.
Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64?
And now the podcast where together we discuss proactive aging on your terms, connecting to the professional advice of our special guests while creating better days throughout the aging process. Now here's your host, Mark Turnbull.
All right, and I want to say hello, everyone, and welcome back to another lively discussion on aging today. We are the podcast where together we explore the many options to aging on your terms. You can find Aging Today and our past 8 years of programs. All you got to do is go to www.agingtoday.us and you can go back into the archives. And then for those of you that want to follow us on your favorite podcast channel, we're on most all of them, whether it's Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, we're there, and all you got to do is tune in. And I encourage you to follow us because that is, an indicator for us to know that we're hitting our mark. And then also, with those of you that have questions about the aging process, we really want you to reach out to me, your host, Mark Turnbull, and all you got to do is email me, and it's mark@agingtoday.us. It's Mark with a K at agingtoday.us. Well, Aging Today, as you know, is a podcast about aging. And if you're not too busy aging or being born, you're too busy aging. And so we recognize we're all aging at our own pace. There are many ways to age, and aging, when the aging villain enters into the picture of our life stories, accelerating the aging process, we know that happens. And so today we're going to visit one of those old familiar aging villains. Yep, it's COVID-19, and in particular, long COVID. Did you know, and this is a really fun fact to know, did you know that 10 to 15% of the people that have had COVID are living with long COVID? 17 million people today in the U.S. are living with long COVID. 79% are living with some form of limitations, life's every activity of daily living limitations, and then 25% report severe limitations. After 1 year, 18% have not yet returned back to work. So those are some important facts to know, and long COVID is not going away. And so because it's not going away, and I know that there are many people that listen to this show. In fact, I have a personal friend. She's a nurse friend of mine, and she was one of the first to be diagnosed with long COVID in the state of Oregon. And so we're going to dedicate this show to Valley. Valley, this show is all yours. But anyhow, traditional medicine has not been, as responsive as maybe we would all like it to be when it comes to the solutions or the treatments to long COVID. But our guest today, he's a familiar face to you if you've listened to Aging Today podcast in the past. His name is Dr. Teitelbaum, and Dr. Jacob Teitelbaum, and he's a medical doctor, and he's one of the world's leading medical experts in viral infections such as chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, and energy and pain. And he has written a new book, one of 12, and he's written a new book, There is Hope for Healing in Long COVID. Dr. T, welcome back to Aging Today.
Mark, it's great to be with you. And for those of you who had COVID and have persistent symptoms, whether it's fatigue, trouble sleeping, pain, and any of a host of things, even heart disease, lung disease, these are all very, very treatable. That your doctor doesn't know doesn't mean there's lack of effective treatment, just lack of effective education. We will teach you today what you need to know to begin your recovery. My book, You Can Heal from Long COVID, is cheap. It's on Amazon, easy to get. It's a guidebook, but we're going to give you the information today that
Yeah.
you need to recover.
And I want you to state that again, because that, as I went away after reading your book, it's the thesis of your book is that it is treatable. We need more education.
I remember, oh God, back in 1975, Mark, I came down with this nasty viral infection. It was pretty severe, and the test showed that there were an infection. They couldn't identify it. 6 weeks later, I was still non-functional. I was paying my own way through med school. I was working as a nurse in Children's Hospital. I couldn't work. I couldn't focus for school. I was too exhausted. I had to drop out. I was homeless, sleeping in parks. And the professors all said, well, 6 weeks after a viral infection, you should be about it. It's probably just depressed med student syndrome. And that's what they're still doing that today. They've done that with chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, any disease that is very complex, does not have an expensive treatment, and that there is no one test. You have to use your ears and your mind to diagnose it. There's no one test you can get to diagnose it, especially if it affects predominantly women. The doctors call it hysteria. Hystero comes from the Latin of for uterus, to give you an idea of why women get labeled with, just in your mind, which is obscene and abusive.
Yeah. And so where are we today? I mean, 4 years ago, the world was introduced to this virus. And 4 years later, not hearing a lot about it. And, occasionally you do and occasionally you don't, and it goes all over the place. What have we learned since then?
Okay, one, we know that long COVID, if you have the tired, achy, brain fog, can't sleep kind of process, along with maybe some lightheadedness, things along those lines, you have post-viral fibromyalgia. We know that. And we have hundreds of studies. I've published 8 of them myself on how to effectively treat that. So once you make that connection, this is fibromyalgia, it's post-viral. We know how to treat that. We know how to take care of that. All of a sudden, you have 50 years of research. So this data is most doctors going, well, they say, how do you define long COVID? Any symptom that persists more than 3 months. So if you have trouble breathing or trouble smelling, or you have a heart attack or a stroke, or you're bedridden, these are all the same disease. It's like saying, car crash syndrome. Don't you think we should maybe separate hip fractures and skull fractures and chest contusions? No. It's all car crash syndrome. And that's now electric car crash syndrome. We can't use any research from previous car crashes.
Yeah.
You can understand it's a problem. We're going to be 30 years before the medical profession comes up with anything helpful for people.
Yeah.
But they don't have to wait.
You know this firsthand because you started to tell the story in 1975?
1975.
1975. I was just a senior in high school. I didn't graduate till 76. So that tells you how old I am. But in 1975, you experienced.
I don't know about
you. but you experienced something and that then began to bring a correlation between what you experienced back then to what you begin to witness what was happening today.
I've been researching long COVIDs for 50 years because of my own experience.
Yeah. And I think that's really important to know, because as we get into the long COVID, and I want you to give us a good working definition of what long COVID is, and then let's get into the symptoms, and then we can get into some of the remedies for long COVID. And I think that there's not enough information out there. I think that's one of the things that I've learned as people that are suffering with long COVID. There's just not a lot of help by the medical community. So let's get all that straight.
Absolutely. So how do you know you have long COVID? Again, any persistent symptom that started with the COVID or got worsened by COVID that has lasted more than 3 months, whether intermittent or straight through. That's the definition of long COVID. If you're wondering what component you have, if you have chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia or brain fog, if you're exhausted, can't sleep, brain fog, achy, if you have any 2 or 3 of those, you've got the fibromyalgia component. There's a simple free quiz on my website that will tell you if you have the diagnostic criteria for CFS or fibro. But if you have the fatigue, you might have 50 other symptoms with it, but you have the long COVID. If you have heart disease, not shortness of breath, many of you will have shortness of breath, they'll scare you to death. Email me. Mark, can I give up my email address?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, write this down. Fatigue, FATIGUE, DOC, fatigue doc at gmail.com. If you have shortness of breath, ask for the shortness of breath information sheet. You can ask for the long COVID information sheet. Each of the things we talk about today, I'm happy to send out free information sheets because it's a lot of information, so you don't have to scribble frantically.
Yeah.
You'll know it'll all be organized for you if you want.
Yeah. Now, one more thing before we get into the nuts and bolts of long COVID. Why should anyone listen to you, Dr. T? That's really important because you are a researcher. One of the things I've really appreciated about you is that you're a researcher and you're very practical in the research that you've done, and you're all about solutions. So get a little bit more into who you are and why people should trust you.
Number one, I am an MD. My background is internal medicine. So I've been doing this field for almost 50 years now in terms of researching this area. I have published as principal investigator, I'm the lead researcher on 8 studies of effective treatment for post-viral and other causes of chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, which includes long COVID. I've been asked and have written 3 medical textbook chapters on the condition. I am frequently on CNN, Fox, even the Dr. Oz show when he was on Oprah and Friends, Good Morning America. Often out there teaching. The main concern that many of you have...
And don't forget Aging Today now. Don't forget the podcast Aging Today.
Well, Aging Today is big. That's the big one.
Yeah, that's the biggest of all of those others you just cited.
So this is what I do. I'm a researcher, I'm a scientist, but I'm a clinician as well. So I know how to take broad areas of information and put it together. More importantly, I take no money from any pharmaceutical company. That's a lot of money that I'm kind of like saying no thank you to, because it's very hard to maintain objectivity otherwise.
Good for you.
So I'm here. I had this. I know what it felt like and to be decimated, crippled, go to the doctor and be told there's nothing wrong with you, you're crazy, or implied.
Yeah.
And I know how to get you well. So nobody pays me to be here. I'm here because I can help you and I know what you're going through.
Yeah.
And I want to help everybody who wants to get well.
How soon did you know that when COVID was hitting that, you saw the long COVID and you made the correlation to chronic fatigue syndrome or to fibromyalgia or any other inflammation, pain management type things? How soon did you know that there was a correlation there?
Within 2-3 months, we saw the processes that were being hit. We saw the immune changes that are going on. We saw the changes on the blood testing. We saw the symptomatic things. This is not the first infection. This is more in the order of the 50th infection to trigger post-viral or post-infectious chronic fatigue syndrome. This is not anything new. This is just one more. We've seen this before. Yeah. And once we saw taking certain pathways, we saw triggering Epstein-Barr reactivation. We saw the cortisol's going down. We saw all these different lab measures and said, yep, this is doing that long COVID kind of process or post-viral fibromyalgia.
So tell me, and as I was reading your book and I came up with this question, this is really a good question. What does a circuit breaker, the hypothalamus, and being having COVID have in common? What do all those three have in common?
Okay, so basically, one of the most important functions we have is to keep our temperature from dropping. Because if we're put out in the world, we can live without water for 3 days and food for weeks. But if we don't manage to keep our temperature above 94 degrees, we're dead. So there's a key circuit breaker called the hypothalamus. It's an almond-sized area in the brain. It controls sleep. It controls your entire hormone system. All of this is done to control temperature regulation, and it controls blood pressure, pulse, gut, and other functions. This is all wrapped on one circuit breaker. It uses more energy for its size than any other area in the body. So when energy levels start to drop, as you see with long COVID, that circuit breaker goes into hibernation mode. And then you have trouble getting restorative sleep. You get lightheaded when you stand up sometime. You get brain fog. You get all this whole cascade of symptoms. It also ties in with the increased sensitivities. For those of you who are starting to feel like, geez, I'm sensitive to everything, and it changes from day to day. That's called mast cell activation syndrome. That happens when the circuit breaker goes offline too. You can ask for the sensitivity information sheet when you email me.
Yeah. And what I gleaned from your book is that the reason why the hypothalamus is so important is because it does draw the vast amount of energy from, to the body. Explain to all of us what's happening when a virus enters into the body. I found this to be fascinating. I did not know that viruses don't have any energy of their own.
Mm-mm. Well,
Explain
first
that.
thing, well, the virus goes into the body. In this case, with COVID, it's usually on moist surfaces inside the nose, the mouth, the lungs, the gut. So the first thing it meets is our Navy, called the IgA antibody system. So staying hydrated, because our Navy works very poorly in dry dock, is really important, more important than any medication in preventing your catching COVID in the future, is sleep and hydration. I know I'm going off topic. I'll get right back to it. But water makes a big difference. Okay, say the cells, your Navy's in dry dock because you're dehydrated. The virus gets through, gets into the cells. Now it's sitting there and it wants to make billions of baby viruses, but it has no energy-producing equipment to do so.
Mm-hmm.
What it does is it hijacks our body's energy furnaces called mitochondria, and it uses that energy to reproduce. So what our bodies say is like, dang, we're not going to let it do that. Your body shuts down energy production to try to starve the virus. That's why you get exhausted during the flu and other bugs. Your body is trying to starve the virus. Now, normally, your immune system comes in, kills the virus. Hopefully haven't gotten ahead of it because of slowed reproduction by dropping energy. The virus particles are all gone. They're not seeing any more. Lights go back on. Circuit breakers go back on. Energy furnaces go back on, and you're off with your life again. But what happens when little pieces of the viruses still persist? Dead virus, but their body hasn't cleared it out. Your body thinks that virus is still there, and it will continue to shut down energy production. And your circuit breaker, if energy doesn't make it stuck in the off position, because it doesn't have the energy to turn back on.
And is that true with all viruses, not just the COVID, but what about flu viruses and on it goes?
No, there's certain
principle?
certain viruses are more likely to do this. We know for Epstein-Barr virus is a major trigger, CMV, HHV6, cytomegalovirus. There are maybe a dozen viruses. We know with Lyme disease. We know with a host of other bacterial infections, a host of parasites. Polio used to do this. It's post-polio syndrome is what they call it. Same thing. So there are certain viruses. We don't know why some yes and some not. HSV virus is very common. Will trigger the post-viral chronic fatigue syndrome, or long COVID, as they call it here.
Yeah. Okay, so it's an energy problem. It's stealing our energy. It needs energy to survive. So what are the implications of it stealing our energy? How does that make us feel?
So this triggers a whole cascade of problems. That's why it's so confusing for doctors. As a doctor, we want somebody to have something simple. Oh, you have frequent urination and it burns. You've got a bladder infection. Yay. Your blood sugar's high. You've got diabetes. Your blood pressure's high. You got high blood pressure. We have a test. We have basic 1 or 2 or 3 symptoms and a treatment that's preferably expensive. And then everybody focuses on that. But there are literally dozens, if not hundreds, of symptoms that happen when energy goes down. So core symptoms: tired, achy, brain fog, can't sleep or can't get a restorative night's sleep. You've got 3 or 4 of those. You've got post-viral chronic fatigue syndrome. And if it started with COVID, you've got that. But it can cause hundreds of other symptoms. Your immune system may be on overdrive and exhausted. You may get out every infection that comes by. You may have pain all over because the low energy causes muscles to get locked in a shortened position. Over time, that triggers brain pain and small fiber neuropathy, nerve pain. This circuit breaker, the reason we stand up, we're a big bag of water. We stand up, gravity sends all our blood down to our legs. This is a circuit breaker that sends that blood from your legs back up to your head when we stand up. So that doesn't work very well, and you get what's called POTS. Postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. You stand up and your heart starts racing and you may get a little lightheaded and brain fogged. So these are, numbness, tingling in the fingers, shortness of breath, the list goes on and on. Also, many of you, instead of getting the post-viral chronic fatigue syndrome, you may have had myocarditis. But we can treat that. You may have had a host of other, a lung injury, lung inflammation. We can treat that. And if I can take a moment, Mark, and just look at organ injury damage.
Yeah.
Damage. That's free radical. This is basically, it's like the virus rusts these organs. It's called oxidative stress. And you can help this with things that are antioxidants and anti-inflammatories. So I will there's a product called Curamed. It's easy to find, but get that specific one. Most curcumin, you need to take 300 pills. This is just 750 milligrams twice a day. And you can email me for the long COVID organ damage information sheet. This will all be laid out. You want to take antioxidants, a good multivitamin. I like Clinical Essentials. There's many, many ones out there that will give you the antioxidants easily. Antioxidants, anti-inflammatory, turn off the persistent COVID injury that's still going on in your organs, so they can start to heal. The brain injury, there's PEA, and I would get one called healthy inflammatory response. It actually helps brain cells to regrow, even with stroke, even with the dementia. And any chronic pain has been shown to be incredibly helpful. So I know I'm going blah, blah, blah. There's all these things. But mostly what you had was inflammatory and antioxidant you need, and you have an energy crisis. The key focus today will how do you turn energy production back on? Anybody with fatigue or fibromyalgia or pain, this is going to help you recover.
One of the things that I saw, that I read in your book was in alluding to this very topic, is that when the virus eventually leaves the body still is in fatigue. And it hasn't turned itself on, just like you were saying. How do you get that body to turn itself back on and get the energy flowing again so that you can get rid of all these implications?
Well, here's the thing. It's kind of like a vicious cycle. And you turn energy off, circuit breaker goes off. You can't make enough energy to turn the circuit breaker back on. It gets stuck. So if you restore energy production, this circuit breaker comes back on. Our research has shown that. And then your body can start to scavenge and clear out the rest of the virus. So our researchers showed this is a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study put together with health people at the NIH. It's funny. The researchers said, we can help you on the study, but you can't mention our names.
What?
Politics is funny. I said, thank you. And they helped me design a good randomized double-blind placebo-controlled study looking at treating what you call the SHINE protocol. That's where you optimize sleep, hormones, and blood pressure as well. Infections and nutrition and exercise is able, just mild exercise to prevent deconditioning. 91% of people with long COVID or fibromyalgia recover with an average 90% increase in quality of life by treating shine to restore energy production, sleep, hormones, infections, nutrition, exercise as able.
Now that's an acronym that who is that an acronym that you created, or was that an acronym that's in the medical field in general?
That's an acronym I created. I used to call it the SHIN protocol. And then, I was talking with Dr. Oz. I said, we need to tell people about this. He said, yeah, blah, 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 prove it. So there was this lieutenant in the Air Force who had written him that she had horrible chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. So he said, you go see Teitelbaum. Let's see if he can get you better. And a month later, she was fine. She was healthy again. So he said, okay, now you can come on the show and talk about it. So
go over those acronyms again. So S stands for?
S is sleep, because this is a sleep center. It's not working. You can't get restorative sleep without help. Okay. This controls hormones. So hypotension also. So hormones, thyroid, adrenal, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, all of those need to be addressed. Even if the tests are normal, the tests are, what's the medical word, caca. They are grossly unreliable. Doctors do not know where the normal range comes from. We'll talk about that later if we have time. You have to treat the hormones. You have to treat hypotension. Remember, you stand up, blood rushes to your legs. You get racing heart. You get POTS. All that needs to be treated. It's not hard. It's really not hard. I is infections. When certain infections try to throw the body into chaos by triggering jailbreaks of other infections, like Epstein-Barr or even shingles or things like that. So suddenly,
explain those jailbreaks, because I found that fascinating too. Like chickenpox is in jail because we have a vaccine, but then it breaks out of jail, as you describe in your book, and it turns into shingles. Do I have that correct?
There's certain viruses, there's certain viruses, some infections your body just kills. It says, we kill it, we're not expecting to see it again, and it's easy to remember how to fight that virus, you're gone. Some viruses are harder to keep down, and I'm guessing that the body keeps little pockets of the viruses so it can continue to train its troops on how to fight these viruses. But it keeps them in jail cells, sends the troops in, okay, practice on them. So it keeps the antibody levels at a level where it doesn't go down and you can get it again. So I'm guessing that the body does this on purpose, or maybe it just can't. But you see this with shingles. You have chickenpox. The chickenpox virus doesn't get completely eliminated. There's some in the nerve ends, and you go through a stress where your immune system's down. You get a jailbreak, and you get shingles all the way up, your arm or leg, wherever it happens to get the jailbreak. And so we see this with Epstein-Barr. And there are many, many infections, candida, other infections, that the immune system is just so overwhelmed that these other infections, it's kind of like, you have one big dog gets loose in the yard, and it sets free all these other little yapper dogs that now come chase you. You got to put them all back away.
Yeah. What are some other examples of infections that, can affect us in your SHINE acronym? So you have
the most.
Go ahead.
Most important are the viral infections.
Infections. Okay.
Yeah, there's not a test that I would give a nickel for these persistent, whether it's Epstein-Barr or the rest. The tests are positive on everybody. I go based on symptoms. If you have recurrent flu-like symptoms, if you have chronic pain that doesn't budge with anything else. There's an excellent book by Dr. Forrest Tennant came out this week on the importance of treating Epstein-Barr reactivation and chronic pain. He's a pain specialist who's quite good. So I'm going to treat based on symptoms. I will go with a mix of Famvir and Celebrex and Tagamet. I know it's an odd combination, but the research shows that giving this for about 4 to 6 months dramatically improves not just the pain, but also the energy, the whole post-viral fibromyalgia phenomenon. But it takes about 4 months to knock it back. There are certainly herbal ways to go after it as well. But for this, I prefer the medications. Candida, you have chronic sinusitis, nasal congestion, post-nasal drip, gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, and it's not seasonal allergies. It's usually going to be candida overgrowth. And since there's no test that distinguishes normal growth from overgrowth, we will treat it. I will use the medication diflucan. There's a compounded nose spray, or the herbs berberine Med-X combined with an EP300 propolis. These are, when I give specific names, is because sometimes brand matters, sometimes it doesn't. But these go in and also help kill candida.
And the N, so we got the I, infection. What's the N?
And it's nutritional support.
Nutritional
That's the
support.
foundation of making energy. That's the foundation of getting your immune system working. That's rest. So I like a good multivitamin called Clinical Essentials tablets. I will add something called ViraPro, VIRAPRO, which is elderberry combined with high doses of zinc and high doses, the proper doses of vitamin A, D, other nutrients needed to optimize infection. And it's dosed properly. I will give those two together for a while and then stay with the multivitamin. We did one study on 188 people, including half of those with post-viral chronic fatigue syndrome, the other half with CFS and fibromyalgia, who had at least a 50% drop in function. The HRG80 red ginseng, and I would get the chewables. It's 1/4 the cost for the effect to get the chewables over the capsules. 1/2 to 1 a day, or even 2 a day as you like, increased energy, an average of over 60%. Stamina went up 80%.
Mm-hmm.
One simple little herbal, but again, you need a form of ginseng that has the potency. Most don't. So the HRG80 red ginseng. For those of you with chronic pain, mast cell activation, your immune system's down, but you have the small fiber neuropathy. The research, I'm just now tying together the research that shows that all of that is a deficiency of a molecule called PEA. And this is one where we have a lot of people just starting to do it. Again, the form I would use is called PEA, Healthy Inflammation Response. Use that specific one because it's high absorption, 2 a day. It takes 3 months to start working. But many of you will find that mast cell activation, small fiber neuropathy, the whole pain will go way down. It's even for dementia, it's one of the only nutrients that causes new brain cells to be born and develop, as opposed to just protecting the ones that are there. We should talk about this in 6 months when I have more research back on it. I'm really excited about this one, but I'm also still data gathering. We have about 100 people that are using it now, and I'll be able to give you more clear information. But that's a missing link piece. That's going to be an amazing piece of the N for nutrition in this puzzle.
Yeah, that sounds very exciting. So supplements, whether they're vitamins and herbs, you've got a regimen, that can help people specifically. Where do they, that's a lot. I mean, my little pea brain could barely grasp all of that. So if I wanted to go to your website, is that where I would learn more about what you just described? Email you? Okay. Because
Fatigue, again, write it down. Fatigue, FATIGUE, DOC @gmail.com. You can just ask for the long COVID information sheets. I'll send you those in the box. If you have sensitivities, say sensitivity sheets too. If you have shortness of breath, say shortness of breath. If you got no money and you say, how do I get well with no money? Note that I'm financially stressed. I'll send you the information sheet on how to get well without much money. Let me know. And once I have the info sheets, I can send those to you for free. And also, shameless plug, my book, You Can Heal from Long COVID, will teach you. It's all laid out in easy terms. My other book From Fatigue Fantastic is a textbook. The You Can Heal from Long COVID is written for people with brain fog. Short, sweet, simple. Here's step 1, 2, 3, 4.
I resonated with your book because you are technical, you are a researcher, but yet you write in a very easy to understand, style. And if I can understand it, anybody can understand it. So that hats off. Yay. Good job.
Well, thank you.
I want to get back to a little bit on the nutrition side. So on the nutrition side, we got the supplements, we got herbs and vitamins, that you recommend. Do you advocate for a certain regular diet, whether it's keto or whole food plant-based or Oreos?
Keto can be very helpful. Oreos are tasty, but leave them alone.
Yes.
You want to
I was
avoid
being
sugar.
facetious on that.
And you'd be amazed how many people aren't. They are tasty. I just don't eat them. My body doesn't do sugar.
Yeah.
Cut back sugar, increase salt. Do not salt restrict with this disease. You'll crash and burn. Increase water intake.
Why
You're drinking
salt?
like a fish. Because two of the hormones that hold on to water in the body are controlled by the circuit breaker. So you pee like a fish, and even though you're drinking like a racehorse, you're like a bucket with holes in it. You can't hold on. Salt is a sponge that holds water in your body, and you want the water. Otherwise, you can dehydrate no matter how much even if you're drinking a lot. In terms of diet, there's no one diet that's best for everybody. Most people with illness feel best on a keto type diet or a high protein, frequent meal, low sugar diet. And just use common sense. You don't have to be on a perfect diet, but don't sit there eating fast food all day either. Get real healthy foods and see what leaves you feeling the best. Now you may say, hey, I have a strawberry sundae and I feel great. I'm saying even 3 days later, not just 30 minutes later, because it's an addiction. So listen to your body. See what leaves you feeling the best. High salt, high water, low sugar, high protein overall works best for people.
Yeah. Do you have a preference of how people get protein, whether it's meats or whatever form?
Everybody's different. Listen to, there's times in my life I've been vegetarian, and there's times doing heavy labor that if I had been vegetarian, it probably would have killed me when I worked in the steel mills. No, see what feels best to your body, see what works for you, and use your common sense.
Yeah. I think that's so important. We often forget that we're all wonderfully made, and each of our bodies react differently to different types of diets and foods, and on it goes. So I think that's wise advice.
Mark, can I add a couple of other quick things? Because pain is an important part of this. And for those of you with pain in general, one of the books I wrote is Pain Free 123. It's an older book, still a good book. Or you can look up the Cure's A to Z phone app. It's a free phone app that had over 1 million downloads. And you can look up your type of pain, whether it's arthritis, migraines, or whatever. But sitting in pain is not good for you. The pain that your doctor doesn't know how to treat it doesn't mean there's no treatment. Almost all pain can be effectively treated. The book From Fatigue Fantastic is probably the best one. It's a little more complicated, but I'll go through each kind of pain. A very good herbal mix for pain is called Curamin, Curamin. And if you have chronic pain, the PEA that I mentioned, the PEA, healthy inflammatory response, 2 a night, give it 3 months to start working. The Curamin, you see pretty quickly, and at 6 weeks, you'll see the full effect. But there's so much you can do for pain relief. Migraines, vitamin B2, 400 milligrams a day, in magnesium, drops migraine frequency by 70 to 80% after 6 weeks. They're cheap, easy. Nobody's teaching a doctor about them.
Yeah.
Because they're cheap.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. No bad guys. It just is who's going to pay to get that information out there.
Yeah. How did we get, I'm kind of jumping around here. We're going to go down another rabbit trail, but how did we get to the place where all of this became so political and we weren't listening to the science, even though people were saying, you got to listen to the science, but this is the science.
This is the science.
What happened? I mean, Have you any thoughts on that?
Yeah, around the 1980s to the 2000s, medicine went from being this really all about people and health. And people were good. I've never met anybody in the pharmaceutical industry, doctors, they're all good people. But what we have over the last 40 years is our institutions have become corrupted by corporate and power, money and power. It's the old thing. So they're rotten institutions full of good people. Medicine is no exception. Virtually everything we get taught as physicians is spoon-fed us by the pharmaceutical industry. In the year 2000, 2 editors of the New England Journal of Medicine, the main Harvard journal, retired. I don't know the background story. One of them basically said that continuing medical education for physicians has become slick pharmaceutical advertising masquerading as science. The other says, I'm saddened to say, and this was in the New York Times, she said this, I'm saddened to say that I no longer believe much of what I read in medical journals anymore. This was the lead editor, one of the editors in New England Journal of Medicine, the Harvard main journal. So what happened is around 2000, that was kind of the final death knell, where medicine went from being science-oriented to basically controlled by industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're all good people. I will say again, I know these people. I've met these people. They are all good people. They're all well-meaning.
Yeah.
But if you have somebody who stands up and says, but this new multi-billion-dollar drug, it causes these side effects. Well, we've paid these 4 experts $300,000 apiece. Experts, do they cause a problem? No. Well, one of them says, yes, he's fired. Okay, how about the new ones? And suddenly, everybody in the room is kind of like, yeah. Anybody who says no finds themselves out of the room.
Do you see that? Are we clawing our way out of this hole that we've created for ourselves, or
we're digging a hole deeper?
We're digging it deeper. Oh, that's so discouraging. How are we going to get out of it? No.
Easy, by taking personal responsibility for our health. You don't have to wait for the healthcare system. Now, there are times our healthcare system is brilliant. You didn't want to be pregnant in the 1700s. Now is a good time to be pregnant. You had a good chance of dying back then. You didn't want to have an appendicitis. Medicine has a lot of beautiful things. And when they help you, that's great. But when they can't help you and the doctor says, I'm sorry, I can't help you, thank them for being honest and go find somebody who can. My books will give you a good start on it. Or if the doctor says, I don't know what's wrong with you and success, so you are crazy, that's when you get up and you say, thank you for letting me know what an abusive SOB you are. That is totally not acceptable. I will let everybody know. Walk out the door, slam it, say, I've never met such an abusive bastard in my life. Please call the police on this man. Tell everybody in the waiting room, leave. This man sits there and says, I don't know what's wrong with you, so you're crazy. You go online and you make sure nobody gets abused. Look at multiple sclerosis. It used to be called hysterical paralysis. Can you imagine any neurologist going in today and implying to a woman's family, oh, don't humor her. She's paralyzed, all 4 legs with the MS, can't move them in a wheelchair. Just push her out of that wheelchair. Don't humor her. She's crazy. This is what's being done to people with CFS and fibromyalgia and long COVID. It is not acceptable. This is abusive behavior and no longer to be tolerated.
Yeah.
Sorry if I get a little... This is what we need. We need to shake up the system. You and I grew up in a culture where free speech was so important, and there was no such thing as misinformation. In fact, misinformation that's part of free speech. And so my fear is what we're doing in this country for our young people, my children, my grandchildren, is that we're taking away the voices like yours that are going against the current, and we can't afford to do that. And this is a perfect example why. It's a matter of teaching discernment. Start to use your own gut instinct. How does this feel to you? We need to be developing BS detectors in our modern age.
Yeah.
And I'll give you some things. So some of you say, well, he's probably just selling this stuff. So I have a simple thing. Except for one product, I don't private label things like most experts do. Everything I've talked about today, you can get on Amazon. You get on Amazon, I won't make a penny.
Mm-hmm.
You buy my book on Amazon, I'll make $1. If you really need, I'll send that dollar to a charity.
Yeah.
Everything that I'm mentioning here today, you can do and cut me totally out of it. And I'm fine with that because you'll be getting well. So this is a policy I have so that you can start in your discernment of, okay, if he's willing to help me get better and not make a penny on it, maybe I should look at this.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we gotta get off that topic, and it's an important one though, because we need information, and it's being blocked, and it's being blocked by big pharma, and all kinds of other factors out there, and people gotta have discerning spirit, and challenge and ask questions.
Yes, and we're being flooded by nonsense to make it harder and harder to tell what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I turn off the media.
Yeah, yeah.
Except for shows like this.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Aging Today. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Have we learned anything from the last pandemic, COVID-19? Have we learned anything so that we don't repeat this again? The misinformation, or it's pretty obvious?
Mark,
you've already said. Yeah.
Mark, we learned that if you scare people to death, it's profitable beyond belief. They throw money at it and nobody keeps track.
Yeah.
You've learned to fear self.
Yeah. So discerning. I'm just, anyhow, well, I'm a guy that the glass is half full. So, I'm hoping that we can come out of this, and that we can come out of it better down the road. It may just take some time, but maybe I'm delusional.
No, you're not. In my 70, I'm 31 years old, but I was born 72 years ago.
Yeah.
I feel 31, so that's how old I am. One of the things I've learned, even being homeless, having been dropped out of med school and homeless and not going days without eating, sleeping in parks, it all turns out to have been a blessing for me and a gift.
Yeah.
Everything has turned out to be a real gift. And I've learned to see things that way. Sometimes it takes a while to notice. What's going on now is perfect. It's a challenge, but it teaches us discernment. If we're going to grow into a bigger world, more conscious world, whatever you want to call it, discernment's important because there's so much more information coming in. And if you can't separate the wheat from the chaff, the static from the pertinent stuff, you're going to get overwhelmed. Consider this our lesson in developing our BS detectors.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing. This is not a bad thing. It's a challenge, but it's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm hopeful when there's people like yourself, Dr. T, out there that are looking out for all of us. And not only do you not have just the wisdom, or you have the knowledge, you have the wisdom that goes behind all this. And knowledge is powerful, but wisdom, I'll put my stake on wisdom every day. So thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for the research that you've done. You're an amazing man, and we need to continue to have you on Aging Today to educate all of us on that there's hope. If you're living with long COVID, what can we conclude with from today's show? How would you like to leave it?
If you have these symptoms, they are very, very treatable. You can email me at fatiguedoc@gmail.com for the information sheets, or you can get the You Can Heal from Long COVID book, and it'll guide you. And I want to leave you on this thought. If you get well, so you can go back to what made you sick in the first place, you've done nothing for yourself. Mm-hmm. Use the illness where you couldn't do all the stuff that you dropped. And as you get better, use that energy to pick up those things that feel good to you and fill your soul. But the other things, you haven't been arrested or homeless for not doing them, withdraw your energy, let them go. Get a life you love, and the illness will turn out to have been a real gift for you as it was for me.
Yeah. And I also want everybody to know you're not alone. There are 17 million people living with long COVID. You're not alone. You're not crazy, because I've heard this from many people that are living with long COVID. Everybody, they say the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, everybody thinks I'm crazy, and they think I'm lazy, and they think that, and the doctors are, prescribing, go to bed, just sleep, and there's more to it than that.
Absolutely. That's abusive. Don't buy into people laying that trip on you. Doctors laying that trip on you. Call them on it.
Yeah.
And find somebody else.
So for those that now understand long COVID and they want to connect with you, once again, tell us your website.
The website is endfatigue.com. So E, N like Nancy, D like David, and the word fatigue, FATIGUE.com. That's where I have products that I sell that I find are the best from all over the country and world. For information, vitality101.com. For the free information sheets and for short questions, people send me the whole medical records. I delete. But if you have a 1 or 2 line, or 3 line question, I tend to get to those and answer them. So my email is fatigue, FATIGUE, DOC @gmail.com. And again, I'm happy to help. I love having retired from direct patient care now after 50 years. My focus is on teaching, and I'm happy to teach you how to get your life back.
All right. Well, you are our professor. You are the one that we look forward to having on Aging Today to guide us, to lead us into a better, healthy life. So thank you once again, Dr. T, for being on Aging Today. And I look forward to having you back on, because there's more to talk about. And in particular, what you mentioned earlier in the show about dementia. So we're going to have you back on and have that discussion as well. Okay, sounds good?
Sounds good.
All right.
And everybody from the big island of Hawaii, aloha.
Aloha. Oh, I love that. I didn't know you were there. Oh, congratulations.
Yes. 20
nice.
years ago, my wife and I moved. Mm-hmm.
All right. Nicely done. Oh, that's our favorite island. Yeah. Okay. When we get over there next time, I'm coming to visit. So yeah, that'd be great. All right. This is Mark Turnbull, your host, and I want to thank all of you for tuning into Aging Today. As a reminder, we are the podcast where together we're exploring the many options to aging on your terms. And remember this, we're all in the process of aging, and as we age, we really are better together. So stay young at heart.
You make me feel so young. You make me feel like spring has sprung. And every time I see your face, I'm such a happy individual. The moment that you speak, I want to go play hide and seek. I want to go and bounce the moon just like a toy balloon. Well, you and I are just like a couple of tots running across the meadow, picking up lots of forget-me-nots. So you made me feel so young. You made me feel there are songs to be sung, bells to be rung, and a wonderful fling to be flung. And even when I'm old and gray.
You've been listening to Aging Today, where together we explore the options to aging on your terms. Join Mark and his guest next week for another lively discussion on proactively aging on your terms, connecting you to the professional advice of his special guests, with the goal of creating better days throughout the aging process. Your host has been Mark Turnbull. Join Mark and his guests every week on Aging Today, your podcast to exploring your options for aging on your terms.
And even when I'm old and gray, you make me feel the way I feel today. 'Cause you make me feel so. You make me feel so. You make me feel so young. So young. You make me feel so young. You make me feel so young.